Hey guys, let's review the love-hate relationship that's sitting here behind me, the FLSUN S1.
It's fast, it's loud, and I don't know what to do with my hands.
Hey guys, welcome back to GL Robotics. Today we have Jeremy Nagy with us. He's been helping us figure out some of the issues that came from the factory with this FLSUN S1. FLSUN has been beat up enough on this thing, so we're not gonna go too far into the weeds on them today, but we're gonna let you guys know some of the fixes that we found for some of the issues. Let's get started with that. Like you said before the video even started, it's fast and it's loud, but it's also very smooth.
It is. It prints, as well as some of the best printers out there, I think.
I definitely think so. I think they're in the right direction with the printer. Problem is that it's loud.
It's very loud.
It's very loud.
By far the loudest printer on the market as well.
You've actually figured out a way to kind of tame that.
We have.
It. So you want to tell us a little bit about that, like what your experience is? I know you've been working with Orca Slicer to try to kind of tame this thing a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So, FLSUN released their own FLSUN Slicer, and it had some settings in it that were mainly targeted at the fastest speed. They weren't really focusing on the print quality, make it a benchmark machine, essentially. They also released their own Orca Slicer profile, and then it looks like Orca Slicer, the developers, released their own, native profile direct from Orca Slicer. And so I was able to take both the FLSUN Orca Slicer profile as well as the Orca Slicer developer profile and kind of merge them together and make one really clean profile. So it's no longer focusing on speed, no longer focusing on the acceleration, it's more focusing on just a clean print and reliable printer.
So more the quality of the print as opposed to, hey, this is just a prototyping machine that can knock out things really fast.
And even with that said, it's still about 4 times faster than my Bamboo Labs printer, so it's still plenty fast.
The old adage, just buy a Bamboo because it's better in every way, it's just kind of that. It's old at this point.
It's antiquated at this point, yeah.
It's almost like wearing Crocs on a film set.
It is. It is.
There's some other really good features that come with this printer, such as the built-in filament dryer, the built-in webcam works really, really well. I've noticed. Clipper, yeah, Clipper's the big one. I mean, at this point, it's just a far superior firmware for printers.
Not only that, but FLSUN has announced that they're going to be releasing an open source version of their Clipper firmware for it, so that the community can add more apps and plugins to it.
See, and I love that, because that was one of the big things with the V400, the last generation machine from FLSUN, right? Was that it's their own skinned, closed down version of Clipper. Right. And so a lot of people were finding workarounds for that and finding ways to install full Clipper on there.
Right.
But if FLSUN is going to unlock their firmware and allow you to do that, I think it's going to interest a lot of people that have been kind of skeptical about this printer.
Sure.
So get more involved with it. One thing I've noticed with these printers, because we had some issues with some of them out of the box, ribbon cable died on a T1. You have a T1 that the print leg actually broke on.
It did.
At the effector. Their customer service has been pretty good for us.
They have.
In my experience, have been very responsive. I sent them a list of what we needed, and because these printers are so new, they've honored the warranty on them and are getting us the parts that we need for them.
As a matter of fact, I reached out to them recently for the issue that we discussed with the Orca Slicer profiles and the power loss recovery. They're actually sending me 2 spare parts for it as a thank you for my help with that.
Oh, really? So they're actually acknowledging the fact that you helped them solve a problem.
They are. They're sending me 2 new effectors for it.
Okay, so you see, that's another pro. And
a lot of companies wouldn't have done that. Yeah.
Recognize when the consumer helps them as a company. For all the hate that this printer has gotten on its release, I think FLSUN is trying to go in the right direction with it. And
they are.
Get it back on track. Now, we're not trying to make this sound like just FLSUN is great. There's definitely things that could be improved about the printer. One of those is, I think, the repairability of the extruder.
You're not kidding.
This printer, how do I put this lightly, seems to be very prone to clogs.
It is.
Having to get in there to get that clog out requires almost a PhD to tear that head apart.
It's a total of 9 screws and about 20 minutes to get it apart.
Yeah, just to get it apart. And that's not to mention, getting the clog out of the throat or in the gears, or that gets a little bit frustrating.
It is, especially with how hard it is to get inside of it.
Yeah,
being
because
so enclosed.
It's enclosed. That definitely seems kind of like a bit of an oversight on FLSUN's part. I mean, I understand that they had a lot to fit into a small area.
Sure, but putting the circuit board in front of the effector really shouldn't have happened. If that had been in the back and you could have gotten to the clog right there
in the
back
front, or on the side or something like that, would have made it a whole lot easier to get into that. Also, not having to pull the whole fan shroud out so that you can get the hot end out, I think would help out a lot too, just because the AI camera and everything is in there.
Right.
Which that's a whole nother set of issues that I've noticed with the printer, is the AI features not being ready. Definitely a lot of false positives
Yes.
on AI features.
A lot of false
especially
positives. Nothing
even-
but false positives so
Yeah.
far for me.
And when we say AI features, we mean things like first
Spaghetti
layer
detection.
layer detection as far as like the smoothness of your print with the camera, spaghetti detection, clog detection,
Debris detection as
debris
well.
detection inside the print case.
Which
Like
I will say the debris detection has been the one that's actually worked reliably for me. At the beginning of the print, if the effector is heating up and you have any filament fall onto the build plate, it has detected that and paused the print so I can clean it off before it actually starts, which is neat.
See, I'm glad you mentioned that because for me, I've just had every AI function except for the clog detection turned off.
Right, yeah, so I've had to leave the spaghetti detection turned off because it constantly goes off for no reason. However, the debris detection actually does seem to function, but the rest were not ready for prime time.
Definitely need some help in the firmware market.
And not just the fact that they don't work, but the
updates.
fact that when it pauses for one of the detections, it doesn't tell you that in Clipper. So you can see on the front screen, you know, it's clogged because there's, or it's paused because there's a clog, or it's paused because there's spaghetti detection. But in the actual app or on the web page for
So
Clipper,
like the main
you
sail
can't-
UI, it doesn't say.
it doesn't actually say what the problem
Right,
is.
So it just says it's paused.
right.
So if you're looking at it, you know, away from home or something like that, you're not going to know what the actual issue is until.
Right. You can hit resume and let it try to continue resume, you know, printing, but it can't actually tell you why it paused in the first place.
Yeah, that's one of those many things that, you know, FLSUN promised with this printer that they weren't necessarily able to deliver on right out of the box. Another one of those things is, you know, the claimed 1200 millimeters per second. Supposedly, what allowed them to get those numbers were some specific G code that they had designed. Now, are we going to be able to replicate that in everyday printing? Absolutely not.
No.
As a matter of fact, the only time I've seen this printer hit 1400 millimeters per second is when it's doing movements between different parts of the print. They definitely need to revise the numbers that they have marketing wise because it's very misleading. There's a few things that I would like to see with this printer that I think would help out, especially with it being able to print industrial kinds of filaments like an actively heated chamber. It's capable of printing polycarbonate, but without an actively heated chamber, it just doesn't go very well.
I completely agree.
And also their packaging and their shipping.
It's very difficult to unbox. That is a large
It was very
printer
difficult to
that is very
unbox,
heavy.
but also taking it out of the box, we broke one of the screens for an S1 because it just fell out. There
Not
was
only
no
that, but
kind of-
the door, the glass door appears to be attached in the box.
and it's definitely not.
And it's just taped in there. So if you take off the tape without realizing that it's not attached, you end up
You're
dropping
going to look like Uncle Jesse and you're going to have a shattered door. Why don't you go ahead and tell me a little bit about the fix that you found for the G code for the power loss recovery? Because I know the issue was if the power loss recovery was stripped, the printer would resume the print, but it wasn't actually pulling filament through because it wasn't providing enough power to the head.
So the issue is actually in relation to the extrusion value. So the printer by default, right out of the box when you boot the printer, expects an absolute E value for extrusion. And so what that means is that, you know, if it extrudes to a point of, let's say, 10 millimeters, then for it to extrude more, you would have to say to extrude to, say, 15 millimeters or 20 millimeters. And the problem is that most slicers by default use a relative value. So it doesn't say, you know, you're extruding from 0 to a point. You're just saying, I'm extruding 1 millimeter at a time, effectively. And so the issue was that when it first starts a print, the start G code included a command to switch the printer from absolute extrusion to relative extrusion. And when you resumed after power loss, there was no G code that told it to turn back on relative extrusion. And so we can fix that one of two ways. You can either go into Orca and set the entire print profile to absolute extrusion, or the simple thing that I did was I just changed the setting in Clipper for the printer.
And that was in the flsun.config file, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
We were able to add the relative extrusion command in the resume power loss recovery script. So there's macros within their firmware that allow it to, you know, pause printing, resume printing, etc. And I just modified the actual resume script and added the relative extrusion value to the G code.
Okay, so it's something as simple as, well, for a more experienced 3D printer, it could be something as simple as going into a config file, changing a line of G code. The issue should be relatively fixed.
Sure, or for a less experienced 3D printer that's just getting into it, they can just check a simple box in Orca and change the entire print profile to absolute extrusion, and that also fixes it.
Okay, now speaking of profiles in Orca, I know you've done some pretty extensive work, like you said in the beginning, of mixing the dev profile and the official FLSUN profile, and I've actually used your profile. It works really well. Can you tell us some of the things that you noticed you had to do with that to make the profile smooth and work?
Yeah, absolutely. So the biggest thing was slowing it down. You know, FLSUN really wanted to advertise the world's fastest printer, And that's kind of what they were going for with this profile. Realistically, you know, yes, it can print that fast, but it can't print that fast and also print pretty at the same time.
Right.
And so that was the biggest thing I did, was just try to slow everything down, not just the actual print values, but try to slow down the acceleration values as well and deceleration values. And even the movement speed when it's not printing, because having it move around that fast causes the whole printer to vibrate and can actually cause larger prints to knock themselves off the bed from all the vibrations.
Right.
So that was the biggest thing, was just slowing everything down. The other big thing was there's a lot of settings in Orca that other slicers don't have that are actually beta settings, such as the small area extrusion. That is something that this printer just doesn't seem to handle well because of the volume and the speed that it prints at. It doesn't really necessarily need that compensation set. So disabling that in my profile has helped it tremendously.
In the limited time that we've had these printers, right, and the kinds of filament that we've gotten to run through them, I know you said you've used silk, you've done regular PLA, you've done high-speed PLA. Aside from high-speed PLA, because it's designed for these printers,
Sure.
what has been your best experience as far as filaments for running through this?
The best filament I've ran through was the Minga high-speed filament. That has been the best experience. As far as outside of the Minga high-speed filament, you know, I've ran everything from Overture PLA through it to even some inexpensive Sunlu filament, eSun filament, a couple others as well.
And what would you say on, say, a scale of 1 to 10, the Sunlu and like the eSun, which one gave you a better experience?
Well, between those two, they're both not great. So if you slow it down enough, regular filament like Overture, Sunlu, and eSun filament actually prints fantastic with it, and it has printed as high a quality as my Bamboo Lab printer. It just has to be slowed down a bit, but even when it's slowed down, it's still 4 times faster than my Bamboo Labs printer, so it's not slow by any means.
Look at that. It is not all solved by just simply buying a Bamboo Lab printer. Thanks for that. We needed that.
Well, wait, so I want to buy a 3D printer for the first time, so you're saying that I should buy a Bamboo?
Absolutely not. I am saying that there are specific use cases where buying a Bamboo would be the right choice for you. Those use cases being, if you want to print multiple colors, Bamboo has done the AMS better than really anybody else. Hopefully with the new iteration of Bamboo printers that are getting ready to come out, pending their, you know, lawsuit thing with Stratasys, they've added like an active heater to their AMS system, kind of like Anycubic did with the Cobra 3. Back to the S1, now that we've gotten off on that little tangent on the Bamboo. Thanks for that, Micah. What kinds of things would you say in like an incremental stepwise FLSUN should focus on?
Well, I think obviously one of the biggest hardware issues would be if they could come out with a way to maybe release like a second version of the extruder assembly that's a little bit easier to work on. I think that would be pretty high on the top of my priority list. But other than that, I think that if they had their own profiles that were more tuned for quality prints instead of speed, you know, there's no reason that they couldn't include multiple profiles in their own FLSUN slicer, as well as their own, you know, Orca slicer profiles that were tuned for both speed and for quality.
That's a big thing that I've seen a lot of people talking about, is that, you know, this printer is not cheap. It's $1,500–1,600. People have been kind of upset that it shipped without any kind of like profile support from FLSUN. So people are like, we have to make our own profiles, and like, that's not right, because the company should be doing this on their own.
Absolutely.
You know, if you buy one of these Minga printers, it comes with pre-made profiles for it. You buy a Bamboo, profiles are done for it. But for some reason, FLSUN, in all their infinite wisdom and their rush to get this printer out, because they were already late with it as is, decided that there was going to be no kind of profile support for it coming out. Like, what are people going to do with it? It's just a giant paperweight at that point. So I definitely think that their engineers and their teams need to get on that. We shouldn't be out here having to spend a week tuning profiles for a printer that touted as the greatest thing since sliced bread.
Because it did take a week.
Yeah, I know. We worked together over the phone a couple nights there.
Yeah.
You know, you were asking me questions and telling me what you had been doing with it. And I definitely appreciate you taking the time to go into the weeds on that. So again, this printer is definitely a love-hate relationship. I love to hate it and I hate to love it, just because it's amazing. The speed,
The quality relative to the speed.
just it's unmatched. There's definitely steps going forward that FLSUN needs to focus on to improve the firmware.
And open sourcing that firmware would be a huge step in that direction as well.
Yeah,
So
open sourcing it.
they've announced that they're going to do that quickly, and I hope that they stick to that.
Allowing people to SSH into the printer, I think, would be a big one, so that people can install Obico and stuff like that on it, so you can view it when you're not on, say, your local network or something like that. Everybody has been used to the Super Racer, the V400. People have had these good experiences with FLSUN, and for a long time, they were the industry leader as far as Delta printers go, and I think that the S1 and T1 put a big hit on that reputation. Great printer, great idea, bad execution. Well, Jeremy, I appreciate you coming and sharing your experience with the printer with us and allowing us to use your print profile that you've come up with for it. It's definitely been a game changer. We're definitely going to share a link to your Orca slicer profiles down in the description of the video so that other people can see the quality and the time that you've put into it.
Yeah, absolutely. And everyone needs to make sure that they have the latest 2.2 dev build installed. However, Orca should have that as a beta in the near future.
Okay, so it is getting ready to come as a beta instead of just a dev build.
That is correct.
Okay, awesome. Well, if you got any useful information out of this video, make sure to give us a like, subscribe to the channel so you can get more awesome content in the future, and visit us at glroboticsusa.com for all your printing needs. Have a great day.